doing this morning? Pretty good. Let's try that again. I drove up from San Diego, California last night. I'd like to see a little more energy. How's everybody doing? Thank you. It's so funny when we were asked to speak and come up here to talk to you guys, people said, "Oh, do you mind driving all the way from San Diego?" I said, "It's not like I'm driving from the far reaches of the moon, for crying out loud. It's 2 hours away, and I get up here to the Southern California, LA, Orange County area, about once a week for business or these type of opportunities." And I tell people, San Diego's a lot like Pasadena or a lot like LA or a lot like Orange County. I mean, we got great people, we have great diversity, great education base, great entrepreneurial environment. The only thing I think San Diego has that LA, Pasadena, and Orange County don't have is, let's see, an NFL team. Although that may be changing from what I understand, at least if the NFL has its way. And if you had the Chargers, good luck with that. Just get ready for the disappointment that comes at about 3/4 of the way into the season. I'm also understanding that there is a whole lot of people here that have their own business or have taken the leap. I'm curious, show of hands, how many people got their own gig right now? That's fantastic. Shout out. Reasons you started. Independence. What else? Independence. Number 2. Any others? Actual enjoyment, fulfillment, right? Independence, getting to do what you want to do and have greater... what was that?
Change the world.
Change the world. Love it. Ethics. Not alignment. Your values didn't align with the company that you're at, right? Yep. Opportunity. Greater opportunities, greater field of vision that you get to do. I think that goes along with independence. How many of you are thinking about starting your own gig? Show of hands. This is fantastic. What are the reasons that you're, maybe are you any of you on the fence or any of you sort of thinking about maybe? It's just a matter of timing? Interest. What was that? You're interested in doing it because of what the opportunities are. Great. Are there any people who are hesitant about doing it or nervous? Any current entrepreneur is still nervous every day at the end of the month? And you all look like I do at the end of the month, and you want to make sure that I have 3 full-time employees and we have some interns. And every month, you want to make sure that bottom line is black so you can make payroll and you've got a couple lines of credit. I totally get it. A little background on me and how I started. I'm in marketing and public relations. I started my firm, Stalwart Communications, just about 8 years ago. We're going to celebrate our 8th anniversary Monday, December 1st. And I have a little different, unique model. It's called pay on performance. If you've ever used a marketing or a PR firm, it's on a retainer, very similar to how a law firm gets paid. You agree to a certain dollar amount, they'll give you a bank of time, they'll bill against that. There's no real correlation to the actual results in terms of press coverage, leads, website traffic, all of the marketing stuff. And I, like a lot of you, who had said, I wanted something that was going to be a challenge. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to make my industry more accountable. There's a book called, for Jim Collins, Good to Great. Anybody ever read that? Big, hairy, audacious goal. And mine is literally to change the industry. I actually cut my teeth as a marketing and PR person, believe it or not, as a U.S. Navy officer. I was in for 9 years. First half as a surface warfare officer. I was in charge of being on ships in combat and engineering roles. I then went to a training command and found out that the Navy had about 200 officers that did public affairs as their full-time profession. I had it as a part-time collateral duty. And I said, oh, I got to figure out how to get that one. So what I did is I went and found other people who did that in San Diego, active duty officers, and I literally got off the ship, knocked on their door, said, sir, Lieutenant David Oates, stationed on board USS Site, how do I get your job? And they were, and I'm sure many of you all have found that too, is I found them to be so welcoming and tell me how basically the transition is to move over. And so for about 1.5 years, they took me under the wing. I applied for a lateral transfer. I got accepted, went to a 2-month immersion school, and was rewarded with a 6-month deployment to Haiti on 3 weeks' notice. That's what my wife said. I was a spokesperson for a joint military operation, about 500 service members, and then came back from that and was rewarded with a 2-year stint on board the aircraft carrier Johnson C. Stennis as a public affairs officer, which was a great job, but it was about the last 16 months. I was in the Navy, I was gone 10. And then decided my hand at the private sector. And here's where the story gets interesting. I had no intention, ever, of starting my own agency. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I went to work for a couple of PR firms. And like a lot of you, I found two things really quickly. I hated the agency model. I hated the idea of being stuck to a time clock, punching a ticket, worried more about the billable hours than the effect I was having on our clients, which was totally opposite from my Navy days, where no one cared how many hours I worked when I was active duty. Did you get the mission done? Did you accomplish that? Was it impactful to what we're trying to set out to do? And it was completely opposite in the agency environment. And the second thing is that I really thought that I could run a business more efficiently and more effectively than the agency principals that I was working with. So it was actually in my final project in lieu of a thesis, my capstone course, I went back to get my MBA while I was working full-time. And that was the origin of Stalwart Communications, which after a 2-year stint as the marketing director where I got to practice my theory on somebody else's dime. I actually went out on my own. But the catalyst for me wasn't still that, okay, I think I'm ready to start this thing. The catalyst for me is I got laid off. How many of you have ever been laid off before? It happens all the time, particularly when you're in the type of environment and businesses that we're currently operating in. And I think it's just a matter of course. If you don't get laid off at some point in your career, count your blessings, maybe, because I think it means there's not a risk that's you taken at some point. At least that's my theory. Our company, the marketing director when I was the marketing director for a software company, we got sold to a rival. And they were very gracious. We had a 3-month transition period. I had a severance package. I kept going back to this business that I put in a shoebox. And I started just talking to people about it. I started networking with people. And I realized this pay on performance model was really resonating with companies that were my target, which is typically startups up to about 75 million. We have a couple that are in the 250 million range. And that was resonating. And I was getting jazzed. To the point that when my wife said, well, what happens if you get a couple of clients and somebody offers you a full-time job? I said, I think this is going to be my full-time job. I think this is what I want to do. And here we are 8 years later. So here's the thing that I find, and I'd love to get your feedback as fellow entrepreneurs and people who are starting. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done, professionally. Anybody here agree? Anybody disagree? Here's the second thing. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I was deployed. I was in Haiti for 6 months, right? I was carrying a 9mm with me, pepper spray. We had to go 2 to 3 people at a time there just to protect ourselves, right? Now, I didn't do what the folks in Iraq and Afghanistan are doing. I wasn't worried about a landmine or things like that, but I was worried about somebody taking a pot shot at me as we were driving around. I was working 20-hour days in the Navy. I was getting on different global environments. I had all the stress related to combat operations and training and things of that nature. This is the hardest thing I've ever done because everything's on you. But the reward is everything's on you. It truly is one of those things where you can make a difference if you believe in yourself to do so. So I would take that as I would take that certainly as the framework for the discussion today. I'm going to talk for a little bit more, and then I want to get your questions. And I want you to give me a little bit of respect on this. Please ask me your toughest question. Because if I can't answer, I'm going to have my wife answer. I gave you some handouts here. Feel free to write notes. The reason that I have a little bit of extra space here in case you want to just jot some things down. If you don't want to take it, please just leave it there. I'll recycle them afterwards, but it does have my contact information. I would not have put my contact information down here had I not wanted you guys to contact me if you have any other questions. Okay, I really welcome the feedback. Here are the things. I think people, when they talk about starting their own business, oftentimes think you have to have a full leap into the forest, right? You have to quit your job, you have to quit your benefits, the stability, and then just go forth and do it. Anybody do that? Has anybody done that? That's the way I think a lot of people think when it comes to entrepreneurship. I saw, Lisa, you were shaking your head.
I'm in that position right now.
Taking the leap of faith? Whether it is you sort of bypass, sort of take away all the comfort that you have right now and launch in the full force. I understand that. I think that's the way most people think when they think about entrepreneurship, and it's probably one of the things, it's my own opinion, that keeps people from doing it, right? I've got family obligations, I've got a mortgage, I've got this, understand. You can start it part-time. It's still going to be a lot of work. But you can start it in your evenings and your weekend hours. Now, you're not going to do anything else, right? That work-life balance thing, everybody, forget it. If you do have a full-time job with benefits and you start this thing, that's it. That's what you're doing. But I will tell you, we met, my wife and I were up in Julian, California. Up until the drought, it was a big place that produced apples. Now it's just a bunch of empty trees. But there was, we walked into a little winery called Blue Door Winery. And it may be at the size of this area. And a husband and wife team. He was in software, I believe. I can't remember. But they had spent years making wine. And they got this little tasting room, and they had this little wine club, and 5 years into the making. Now, keep in mind, too, where they lived was in a place in San Diego called North Park. That's an hour-and-a-half drive that they were doing, that his wife was doing. Every day, he was going to work, and then Friday, Saturday, Sundays, he was going up to run that. And meanwhile, he's doing all the books, he's doing all the financials, and everything like that. We met him, and the wines were pretty good. The wines were surprisingly pretty good, and it had a great atmosphere, and he was passionate. He would talk about that. He said, I just left my job. We've just gotten this thing to the ground, off the ground enough, that we've had a little bit of savings, and now things are starting to come to fruition that I just left my job. That was 5 years after they launched the business. And it literally was for him a 100-hour a week profession with his full-time job, and then what he's doing in addition to that with Blue Door Winery, and that was in addition to his life. So you can start ventures in that same fashion. Anybody have partners in their job, in their companies? Anybody have any partners? Why do you guys have partners? What was the thought on that? Complementary skills?
Division of labor.
Division of labor. Thank you, sir. That's the answer I was looking for. How about you? Motivate, right? Team. Sharing of resources, maybe? Right? If you have the capital infrastructure, if you know that there's a certain level of capital that you need, and for whatever reason you may not have it or don't want to necessarily bank the farm on it, it's totally understandable. Partners is a way to go as well. Sharing in the equity, sharing the risk and reward is a good way to go. Treat it like a marriage, though, because it's exactly what it is, right? If you're not on the same page, if you're not on the same strategic path and have the same goals, it can be kind of dicey when things don't go well, as they will always not go well at certain points. But partnership is certainly a way to go. The bottom line is this. There are many ways to sort of start your own business. I think the one thing that is the biggest obstacle to people starting their own business is themselves, what goes on in their head, okay? You will be the biggest detractor out of anything that starts a business, right? There will be plenty of people, don't get me wrong, that will say no to you, right? For every sale you get, for every dollar you get, there's $3 that said no to you. That's usually the rule of thumb. It's okay. But your head, your ability to believe in yourself is going to be the biggest thing. So I'm going to give you the 5 B's here. This is what I use as a rule of thumb. And for those of you who started the business who know this, I would appreciate feedback, but here's also something to consider. This is a good sort of quick handout that you can give to others who come to you asking to start their business, about them starting their business. How many people have had that? Now you've had your business, and folks have come to you saying, I'd love to talk to you about, I've been thinking about starting your own business. Have you had that happen? Did you seek them out? No, you become this magnet, right? And I think it's because the idea of starting their own business is really energizing. It's inspiring to a lot of folks. And it is something where they're trying to figure out how to go about it. And the mechanics are one thing, but I would submit that most of them come there because they want to hear from you that they can do it. This is a pretty good, quick 5 B's. It's pretty easily to remember that hopefully will give you something that you can to them. The first one, as I said on here, is to be yourself. What do I mean by that? Be yourself. Be authentic. Try not to be something, the opposite is try not to be something you're not, right? Some of you have service provider businesses or other sort of things, non-product related business or not completely product related business. What's the biggest attribute do you think you have to getting clients? Trustworthiness, right? There's the old adage. Go ahead, sorry. Being friendly, right? Accessible. I don't care what business you're in, this also includes product. People buy from people that they know, that they like, that they trust. Doesn't mean you have to be buddies, but very few people buy in good buys on things related to the type of services that we have without kicking the tires, without sitting down, without talking to you, without understanding your thought process, without understanding your value system. If you try to be something in a new business meeting that is not authentic to your value system and your personality, because you think that's what they need to hear, I guarantee you 99.9% of the time it's going to fail. And the 0.01% that does succeed, that's probably not going to be a very fruitful relationship. So be yourself, right? The second one is to be listening to your heart. Not your head, sorry, I hit the mic. Heart, not your head. Trying to make it a point there. Be your heart, not your head. This kind of goes back to my point of saying the mind is the most powerful thing. It sort of goes back to what I was talking about before. The mind is so strong that it can talk you out of anything. I've seen that before. I've seen people who have had all of the education, the expertise in their field, the cognitive ability, they've written out the plan, but when it comes to actually putting the damn business in gear, it becomes so difficult for them to do so. If your heart is telling you to go for it, then figure out a way to go for it. Again, full leap of faith, partnerships, part-time, try it out, but don't be your own distraction, because there are a whole lot of people who will do that for you. Third is to be a sponge. What do I mean by that? Any thoughts? Anybody in the back? Be a sponge. Push them in. Let's talk about it from a customer standpoint. When you say budget, thank you for that. Be receptive. Be inquisitive is another way to say this. But why do I say that? How do you think people find their own? How do you think people find out the next great business? Is it in a silo? Here's a rule of thumb. You want to know what the next great business opportunity is? Go to a party. Why? What happens at a party? People are drinking. So what happens? Start talking. Inhibitions go down. And what happens soon afterwards? People bitch and moan about the things that are bugging them. For every complaint, there's a business opportunity. I don't care what it is, right? I got issues with the car. I got issues with I can't access this. I can't do that there. There are at every business party there's always a business opportunity because somebody's complaining about something. And when you're complaining, there's an opportunity. That's how I figured this out. I hated the retainer model, and then we would with marketing PR firms, and then the clients would come to us 3 months later saying, okay, I know you guys are doing a lot of work, but can we put this toward a results course? Why don't we put this toward some sort of... I mean, I'm not that bright, guys. I came up with this because I was tired of seeing myself be punching the time clock and the customers were complaining. The agency is a bad business model for a lot of reasons, and that was one of them. And I thought I could change this business model. Okay, I wasn't sitting in the silo somewhere thinking, oh, let me do the math problem on this. Be a sponge. The more you learn about what you think your value proposition is, when you talk to clients, or if you're not sure what markets your idea would best serve, talk to people. Get them for coffee. It's a cheap focus group. Be a sponge. Here's the fourth. And it's the first two were a little Zen-like, now we're getting a little more tactical. Be an employee of your own company. What do I mean by that? Let me ask you a question. Anybody work for a limited partnership company where the CEO was taking home a disproportionate salary, had the car under the company name, all of their other accoutrements and things like that? Did it ever occur to any of you that a lot of times your efforts are going to pay for that lifestyle? When you're starting up a business, cash is king. I don't care if you're a finance major or not. Cash is king. Cash means everything. It means more to me than profits, because you can't spend profits. How much money do you have in the bank? Here are your bills. Can you pay the bill? If you start taking all of this extra cash as your own, and look at it as your own pocketbook, you set up the company to have to work harder for less success. Treat the company as its own entity that needs to be cared for and nurtured, even if it's just you as a sole proprietor, because there will be rainy days, there will be sunny days. Treat yourself as an employee. Be cognizant of the fact that you're in this for the long haul and invest in that company. Does that make sense? Okay. Here's the last one. It's not a downer, but it's a realist. Be cognizant of how long this new venture is going to take. There's a couple of things that really interest me. I get people who have come to me
again, much like you, a magnet for when you start your own business. And what's the first question do you think I asked? Why? Why are you starting your own business? Why do you want to do this? What's in it? What's your, and I'm looking for that fire. And I would say probably a third of the answers I get is, I want to work less. That's funny. That is not going to happen. You've never worked harder. You've never had more fun. The other thing they think of is, oh, I got this great idea for a product. I have this thing I'm going to put on Kickstarter. And I'm going to make $30 million and I'm going to sell it to Apple in 3 to 5 years. I always use the example of an entrepreneur, Thomas Edison, inventor of the light bulb. Genius. How many light bulb concepts did you go through before you actually got it? Any ideas? Shout. Thousands. Yep. Thousands. Thousands. When did Facebook start? It was about, actually, what's 2004? When did they become a hit? 2008, 2009 is when they started really getting mass adoption, right? When did they start making money? About 2012, about 2010, 2011 is when they started being cash flow positive. And then they went public, right? So this overnight sensation of Facebook was 6 to 8 years in the making. I've learned this lesson the hard way. I started this agency. I said the first year, if I can, top line revenue, right, less expensive, top line revenue, if I can make, this was just me before I hired any employees, if I can make the same amount of money that I was making as the marketing director for the software company, I'll know I have a hit. I took 20% of that take home. About another 20% I put into retirement fund, because I do want to retire at some point in my life. But the rest of it went right back into the business, because I was investing in the future. But that was sort of my benchmark, right? Now, my business plan had me as, okay, I'm going to achieve top 5 PR size status of San Diego-based PR firms in 7 years. And we'll open up our second office in like a Denver or a Portland at about year 8. And guess where I'm at on that curve? Full disclosure. I'm about halfway there. And that's part of it was the recession. Part of it's just the nature of starting your own business. Anybody do a home remodel? I'm guessing by the smirks that's a yes. What's the rule of thumb when you do a home remodel?
It's going to take longer.
It takes twice as long, costs twice as much. Same thing with the business, okay? What was that? No, you're going to bring it up.
Hires and divorce attorney.
Hire a divorce attorney. Actually, let's go on that, and then I want to hear your questions, and I want to hear the tough questions. This is the other thing. My wife has been extraordinarily patient and also been very generous with me when I started this business. You have your family in your life is the most important thing. And if you are not on the same page with your family members when you're doing this, the people who matter to you most, get that figured out before you start this. Because I will tell you, this sort of sounds like this it's the best thing I've done in my life, but it's not the best thing in my life. Be sure you've got that squared up before you do. Okay? And I'm going to leave you with something that my mother has given me as a piece of advice. Do what you love, the money will come. But the love is the most important. Okay, I'm turning this over to you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned a model. Before you ask your question, we'll pass the mic around so that everybody can hear the questions. So here you go.
Yeah, so you mentioned a model of entrepreneurship where you bootstrap your own company and you're in for the long haul. Many of the things I've heard here and otherwise is that entrepreneurs want to use other people's money and have a quick exit strategy where then they can retire at the age of 27 or something. Could you reconcile those two models?
Yeah, I think my mic's on, but thank you. That is certainly one way to go. Here's the thing. For most people, the availability of other people's money, either through a bank, a private equity, angel investment, or VCs, is not there. It certainly isn't there when you start getting south of Palo Alto. Now, there's some great VC and angel investments here. I actually do some work for the Tech Coast Angels. If you've heard of them, they have affiliate chapters all up and down Southern California. We do some work with them in San Diego. It certainly is an option, right? And the idea of a 3 to 5 exit is contingent because the investors want the money back at that time. But for most of us, that's just not an opportunity. Most of us have service businesses. Most of us have other things that are not what you would call investable. So I would look at that. And even if you have that type of model and you're looking for investors, I think it's important to put a little bit of your skin in your own. I think it aligns you to that. Here's the thing, when you take in other investors, this is the same thing as when you take in partners. I think it's as important that your investors are on the same page as you as to where the vision is. Because I've seen a lot of companies where the entrepreneur or the founder has one idea in mind, and the VCs they bring in have another idea in mind. I'm not saying one is worse, is better than the other. But when you have that type of conflict, chances are none are going to fail. And this is why VCs have a batting average of 100. 1 out of every 10 succeed. I hope that answers your question. Great question. Who else? Sir?
My name is Chuck Chugamlang. I have a question about equities and shares. When you're partnering up with other people and you're starting up a business, what would you recommend about negotiating terms in terms of equity?
Yeah, thanks. So let me make sure I understand the question. This is in regards to if you are providing a service and for whatever reason you may not take your compensation in cash, either salary. Maybe you decided that way, or they're trying to negotiate that way and take it as an equity. What should you command? Do I have that right? That happens a lot. Anybody been asked to work on equity? Yeah, it happens a lot, especially if you're working for other startups or startups are coming to you. It's not a bad option. The way in which you want to negotiate that, this is sort of a general rule of thumb, is try to figure out what your value is to the company, right? In some sort of quantitative term. If you're a marketing and PR person like that, 5% negotiation is probably a good place to go. I'm certainly not going to trump product design folks. I'm not going to trump operations. I'm not going to trump any salespeople like that. But you should enhance and accelerate the sales cycle. That's our goal. That's why we do pay on performance. We accelerate the sales cycle. We're not taking a salesperson or a CFO who's looking for investment opportunities out of business. But what we should do is make their job easier, the less hunting and pecking that they do, and the more they can actually get to a solution setter. But I would submit that that's probably a deal. So figure out where that is. Here's the other caveat, though. Depending on the type of company, this is probably more for, is there any CPAs in the room? Okay, you probably know more than I do about that. But let me try to fake it through here. If you have, depending on the type and structure of the company, there's a C Corp, S Corp, LLCs. Depending on the type of structure of the company, any profits at the end get passed through to the equity shareholders and gets counted against income tax. So if you have an equity stake in an S Corp, let's say, of 10%, and the company makes $1 million, just simple math, right? But you have a policy that says, all right, any profits we're going to get this year, we're reinvesting in the business because we're going to grow. That's fine. But now you're on the hook for taxes against income of $100,000 and you never see the cash. Which means it's probably going to be something around $28,000 to $39,000 depending on your current. Right? So you got to figure out where that cash is. Make sure you're on the same page. Because equity partners, or limited partners, or VCs, same thing. It's marriage. Make sure you're on the same page. Does that answer your question? Great question again. Sir, wait for the mic.
So my question is, so when you start your business, and maybe the first time is you only have your own self, or maybe with your family, and when you start to think to hire people, so it means, do you have enough money? Then you start to think to hire an employee, or maybe sometimes you think you need some people to help you, but you don't really have so much revenue to really support the employee. How do you handle this type of things?
Yeah, so I think I heard your question, sir, is when was it the time period that I thought I needed some help, and how did I fund that? Is that essentially? How did I hire the first employee? Oh, okay. So quick background, it was 20 months into my business before I hired my first employee. It was full-time. I didn't hire interns, I didn't hire part-times. I wanted somebody who was going to be invested in that. That's just my opinion. And I worked really hard, really long, until it was excruciatingly painful before I hired that person. I was investing and putting money in a way that I thought, well, if the bottom drops out of this, I can at least keep this person on for a few months until I figure out what the hell I did wrong. But it was also that I wanted it to be really painful because then I wanted to guarantee that, in fact, that I was going to need that individual. Okay, so that's sort of the backdrop on it. If you look at the way I hire, I use the Southwest Airlines model. Does everybody know what the Southwest Airlines hiring model is? You know how they hire? They hire for attitude first, and they train for the skill. That's with the exception of airline pilots. just a thought on that. But they'll look for attitude first. They go for culture, they go for values, they go for energy. Much like I can't tell you what your heart is telling you, I can't tell you to follow it, I can't train heart, right? Marketing and PR is not rocket science. I can teach people the fundamental discipline that it's going to take to be successful. But I can't teach them attitude and effort. So I went and looked for people, and I literally went to a group of folks that I know, and I started asking around. The way in which I got the team member who's still with me 6 years later, which, by the way, is a 3-time longer stint than the average PR marketing person at agency. They will turn over in 18 months because of the soul-sucking nature of the thing. She came to me. She saw an article because I was really, any PR I was doing on myself was to champion this cause. I wanted to put a stake in the ground that told other agencies, you better change your model because this model, something on this flavor is coming. And she said, I want to work for you. She was 2 years as a marketing coordinator for a construction company. Before that, she spent 6 months at an ad agency, and she had an internship at a PR firm for 6 months. Not a lot of relative skills that you would expect that a person would be hiring. Certainly not my colleagues in other agencies would look for more. But she came to me with this portfolio with an attitude that says, I want to work for you. I want to make a difference. As soon as it was available, I hired her. And she's been a rock star since. Hopefully that answers your question. You got to find people, here's the bottom line, you got to find people who share the same culture and values as you. You don't want them to think like you. There's a difference. But they better have the same commitment. And then you treat them as well as you physically can. You will be overly generous to them. Because the cost in replacing them, turnover, is high. I heard an amen there. Any other questions? Okay, there's some more. With you. Yes, hi, Lisa.
Hi. So I spent most of my career as a corporate worker bee hiding behind my database and hanging out with the rocket scientists. All of a sudden, I find myself needing to come up to speed or at least understand how to get started on the business side and finance and operations. What would you suggest as resources for learning how to get started on the business side of things? And I'm looking at a service.
Yeah, I think that's great. Here would be my first recommendation. So did everybody hear the question? The question was is that on the areas maybe that you don't know with related to starting a business, in particular finance, how do you get up to speed real quick? Here would be my recommendation, if you have the time. There are plenty of extension courses with community colleges and others that you pay a flat rate to learn basic financial accounting. I don't expect you at the end of that one to be an accountant, because I certainly am not. But I can read a balance sheet, I can read an income statement, I can read a statement of cash flow. It was one of the reasons I went back for my MBA, because I had aspirations actually not to still run my own business, but to be a VP of marketing at the time I was thinking, a company of 100 million or more. And I thought I needed to be cognizant and understanding of what the other people in the executive team were talking about. There are plenty of extension courses that you can get for that. And then when you launch your business, pay the money for an accountant you trust to help walk you through. And do it, and an independent accountant is a great way to start, right? Because they're busting their tail just as much. They understand what you're going through, not only from a financial and number standpoint, but also from an emotional standpoint. And ask their advice. We've contracts, the most expensive thing I have, second to, or third to labor and rent, is the accounting resources. I'm going to cut that cost in half because I'm going to make some strategic changes. But I'm going to have 2 people. I'm going to have a bookkeeping service that I trust, and then I've got an independent CPA who's going to act as a CFO. And once a quarter, we're going to sit down. I'll pay him his rate, and I'll buy him as much coffee as he wants. And we're just going to go through. Yeah. Mentors. Bigger picture. Mentors. You're not going to know everything when you start out there. Don't pretend that you will. Don't make that a stumbling block. But bring around yourself people that can. I have several. I meet once a month or once a quarter or once every 6 months with a different group of people. And we will go to a nice restaurant. We don't look at the price on the menu. We'll drink wine. We'll have meals. There's anywhere from 10 to 20 of us. We split the check evenly. And we go around the room and we bring up problems that we don't want to tell our accountant or lawyer, or not quite yet until I have an answer to my spouse. She's looking back going, really? Because you need that kind of sounding board. Chances are there will be others who have gone through exactly what you're going through, or they're going through it now. So, that helps. Yes, in fact, thank you.
How did you decide? What's your philosophy on your staff compensation, and how do you do your evaluation, bonus, or how would?
Yeah. So I know. Anybody watch Hunt for Red October? There's this line that Sean Connery has in there. He goes, I know their tactics. I know how they operate. And I know what my competitors, thank you, that's as best as I get for a impression. I know what my fellow agency colleagues are paying. I know what the salary scale is. And I want to be competitive to that. Now, but what I do is, because we're paying on performance, I want my team to have the same benefit when they make a difference for our clients as the company does, in terms of they should get a cut on it. So they have a competitive base, slightly lower, but they make it up and then some by when they're successful, either by getting press hits, websites, leads, social media followers for a client. They get a percentage of that performance bonus that we charge the client. And then I offer them, I'm 4 people with contractors on speed dial. I'll probably hire a 5th one in Q1 if things are continue to go there. But I offer medical benefits and I offer retirement plans. They're not Cadillac benefits, but they're benefits because I want to show people that I care about them.
Yeah, so it's sort of a profit sharing in a way?
No, it's not a profit sharing in terms of they're baked into the fees. Like I know if there's a performance fee that we're going to charge the client for this one, the individual gets a 10 to 20% cut. But the ability to make a profit is still resting on me. And it's a function of, do I have everybody working at capacity? In other words, do I have enough client work for everybody? And am I bringing in that business? And the second is, do I have an efficient cost structure and overhead?
So to what extent are your books open to your employees?
I present the books every 6 months in the state of the agency, with the understanding that it's confidential. Right? Now, I don't go into the granular forms, but I say, here's our revenue, here's our labor cost, here's our general administrative cost, here's our profit. But then I go into more than that. I say, here's our cash reserves. Because that's the thing that bugged me. Again, I told you cash is king, profits, can't spend profits. So I say, here's the cash we have in there, free and clear. And I have personally I just changed the policy. 4 months of cash or accounts receivable. Cash is owed to us by clients. In the books, 4 months worth of it. So if we didn't earn a dime, I got 4 months with the team to go, all right, huddle. I just screwed something up. So we got 4 months to fix this or we're all going to be looking forward. I think that's a much better option than as soon as things go wrong, and they will, that you're laying off people. Because it's like cutting off your leg at the time when you really need to sprint. So I've got that. And then I've got a line of credit and I've got company credit cards. So there's 6 months of access to capital from that one.
So if you're a new entrepreneur, you've just started, you've got some accounts receivable, and they're not paying, what advice do you have for collections activities?
This is collections. People ask me, what do you really, David? What don't you like about your job? What don't you like about it? The only thing I come back to is collections. I freaking hate collections. We succeed. We're paying performance. It's all right here. Here's the bonus. Here's the hits that we got. Here's the fee you agreed to. Hey, I give 2 weeks, and I'm on the phone, and I'm writing letters. Or I get the CPA to write a letter. And it's amazing how clients pay when they just ask. It's not a priority for them to pay. It's a priority for you, and it's essential, again, because cash is king, right? Most businesses have a high AR, a big accounts receivable document because they haven't followed up in X. Because they're afraid to. Damn it, you earned that. Be polite, be respectful. I have taken 2 clients to small claims. I've been in business 8 years. 2 clients small. Threatened 2 others. And gotten paid. That's a pretty damn good track record. And I have to think about this. And I've done some wave, I've done some courtesy, hey, we're not going to charge you for that. But the amount of money I've had to eat that I didn't collect in 8 years, about $5,000. So, just do it.
When you have a new client or a client is launching a new product or service, what makes your process stand out from your competition?
Yeah, I appreciate that. The pay on performance model is very enticing to a lot of companies because they say, here's somebody who's going to align and share in the risk and reward. The challenge for us is we can't take on everything. Any retainer-based firm can come in and somebody's handing them a pile of garbage for whatever reason or it's untested and says, yeah, we'll take you on. Here's the retainer. Here's the amount of hours. Here's the effort that we're going to put into place from there. We have to have a reasonable expectation in our mind's eye that we can market it. I'll give you an example of a company, and I'll get to your question. I'll try to make this brief. We were introduced to a brokerage firm out of LA. Interesting model, really niche, helping individuals convert their 401k IRA accounts into similar tax-deferred structures that invested solely in the precious metal market, gold, silver, platinum. And they had done a really good amount of digital marketing that they wanted to do some PR. So they hired us for a PR arm, or they were going to hire us. And they said, our expectation is a positive article a week in a key major investment media outlet, Wall Street Journal, Investor Business Daily, Money Watch, that kind of stuff. And I said, your expectations of that kind of feature story on precious metals is not realistic. I'd be ecstatic if you were able to get a couple a month. I said, but there's a bigger issue here, and the story's not going to be positive. Because what do you mean? We got growth, we're a stable company. I said, I know, but you know better than I do that the precious metal market has had double-digit decline in returns for the last 3 years. I said after the recession hit and the market crashed, everybody ran to gold, right? Everybody's now selling their grandma's jewelry or whatever and trying to get buyback. Thanks for that. But then the markets came back and gold started dropping. And so did all the other precious metals. All the financial projections are stating that it's either going to be flat or slightly declining. And I said, any reporter who decides to write about you is going to put that as a caveat in their report because their constituency are their readers. They're going to have to say, look, if you're going to invest in something like this, it's going to be a loss leader. You will actually lose money. And I said, my analysis is that will actually detract new customers. You will have the opposite of what you're intending. So my advice to you is not do any PR. Let's put together some really strategic advertising campaigns. Let's own some banner ads. Let's do some stuff on social media. Let's get this unfettered access to the client base. We'll own the messaging, and we will track our performance on the response you get. Nope, want to do PR. Take it or leave it. I said, I wish you the best of luck. I can't take it. I physically can't take it. We'll lose money on that process, right? Yeah, clients for us pay a small base, and we give them unlimited hours for that, but that base only covers half of our costs. And I knew the pitch that we were going to have in there wasn't going to be successful. Reporters were not going to write about it, or if they did, it was going to be bad. Now, a retainer-based firm can take that business any day of the week and twice on Sunday, even if they give them the same advice. The problem is they're going to lose that client in 3 months. They're going to spend a lot of money trying to recur that revenue by trying to bring in other business. And that's really costly. And then imagine this internally. You've got a team that every Monday, they're assigned to this account, and they're walking in knowing that whatever they're going to do isn't going to be successful. Have you ever been in a position where you knew somebody tasked you with something, you said, this is going to be bad? There's a reason why most agencies have 100% client turnover in a couple of years and 100% junior employee turnover in 18 months. And that's the hidden cost that people don't know about. Yes, sir.
Yes, first, thank you for your service, and thank everybody else here who has served for their service. Anyway, how did you know, did you have to do research before you went to this company or dealt with them about what was going on with precious metals, or did you already know that?
I read a lot.
So basically, when they asked you to consider them, you went, you read a lot.
Yeah, let me ask you the question. Let me answer the question. In that case, I knew because my wife and I do our own investment planning, and I'm not going to say that I'm a Series 6 or a CFP, but I know my way around an investment strategy. So I kept up on those kind of things. But for other clients, you bet, before we walk in to talk business, we'll do some research on the market. Some cursory stuff, but at least to be able to know what questions to ask. Yeah, absolutely, it's essential for that. Yes, ma'am.
You talked a little bit earlier about putting a stake in the ground and kind of telling your competition or your peers, hey, this is a new business model. This is the way business is going to be done moving forward. If you were to wake the beast, that is your competition, and they were to decide over the weekend, this is how they want to pivot and change, how do you stay focused on your goals of what your entrepreneurship is in light of the pivoting market based on many factors and technology to make those changes quickly?
So I'll tell you a story. This happened 2 months after I launched the business. I put out a press release that I knew wasn't going to get picked up except for all the local associations, Public Relations Society of America, American Marketing Association. So I sort of just stirred the pot. And I got a call. And it was from the programs person for the local PR society in San Diego who said, February, would you mind speaking on this model? I said, absolutely. And they said, would you mind, we're going to have a principal of another agency and sort of do a compare and contrast. I said, oh, this would be great. I said, love to. Business leaders, I thought we would be talking about different models. Here's a different way of thinking, and it would be more of an academic type of setting. I was so wrong. I walked into that, and it became a knockdown, drag-out, point-counterpoint debate where the opposing principal, who was on my accreditation board for PR 3 years before that, she regrets that now. She called me unethical in the equivalent of a used car salesman in front of my peers of 100 people. And she said, you are denigrating the value of PR and marketing because you are commoditizing our services. We have taken long and hard to move up the food chain to the executive table, and you're not going to back down. And I said, I don't know how you can expect to have a seat at the executive table. Everybody else sitting around that room is tied to some sort of performance metric, right? Salespeople for quotas, IT and ops people for 5-9 uptimes, CFOs for efficiency and EBITDA, CEO for shareholder value. Yeah, you think you're so freaking superior that you don't have to be held to anything. I said, that day is gone. The reason I did that was because it was fun. I came home, and my wife had come home from work, and she goes, how'd that go? I said, I think I'm on to something, because they were so pissed off. I'm actually trying to change an industry because it'll make us better. It elevates the entire game. And the one regret I have at this point, and it has far less to do with the fact that I'm not kind of where I thought we'd be projection-wise, because we're going to get there. But it's that no one else in Southern California has adopted this model. I know of 6 other agencies in the country that do that, about 6. One's been doing it longer than I have. We had no idea that each other existed until we started just to find each other through virtual social media and other sort of blog spheres. And when that day comes, this gets better because now it's a horse race. Now we're comparing apples to apples. It's no longer, we have 30 years experience in this area, despite the fact that the 23-year-old who's on your account doesn't. Doesn't matter the fact that we've been around for a while and we know the game. No, it's what have you done for me lately? And then it's a matter of fine. Now, let's perform, and may the best agency.
We'll do one more
Not
question.
me, that's what makes me better.
One more question.
My name's Carl Sherrill. Given the fact that there's the old rule of thumb, half of all money is wasted on advertising and PR, how does the smaller company better focus to limit that waste?
Yeah, the old adage is, I know half of my marketing budget is working, I just don't know which half. It's because most of it isn't strategic, right? It's about branding, it's about creative, it's about ego in many cases, right? Some of that may be justified, right? There's a lot of brands out here. Beats, Beats, the headset, they're the brand new. Beats is a China-made product. Crap. It's not very good, right? But who's their big spokesperson? Dr. Dre. Colin Kaepernick got hit with a $50,000 fine because he was wearing the Beats at his press conference, which is against the NFL branding rules. That was the best form of advertising. Did you know Beats just wrote him a check for that? Because that sucker went viral, right? So sometimes it's justified, but you have to set an ROI to it. And here's the rule of thumb. if you're doing it primarily for lead generation, right, to bring in new business, to bring in new sales, new revenues, for every dollar you spend on a marketing or ad campaign, you should get $7 to $10 worth of potential, let me underscore, potential business. Doesn't mean you're going to close everyone. And you should, because there may be a reason why your closure rate's not good, right? The product may be inferior, your price point may be, your user interface isn't very good, your customer service isn't very robust. There may be a host of other reasons to do that. But any branding campaign should bring you at least $10 for every $1 of potential, $7 to $10, of potential opportunities. That's a good rule of thumb. Now, there may be other reasons you do marketing claims. You're trying to entice new investors. We have a client called Fitwall. It's a new fitness studio. They're headquartered in Irvine. They're going to be about 200 locations via a franchise model they're anticipating in about 4 years. They have 3 right now. And we got them in Washington Post, Fast Company, CNET, UK Daily Mail. Seth Meyers picked up one of the story and had it in his monologue. Is that for bringing in people within their 3 workout facilities, 2 in San Diego, one in Newport Beach? No, you draw from about a 10-mile radius. But they got the co-founders of Skechers to drop a check for them, thank you very much. And that was pretty important as they're starting to go. And they got 400 unsolicited qualified franchise operators interested in opening. So there may be other reasons why you do marketing campaigns, but there should be an ROI. I think that is it. I'm happy to stick around for a little bit. I have a call in an hour, so I got plenty of time to do so, and my wife's driving back, so I am all yours. Thank you so much for the time. Go forth, do good things.
Before you head out, Dave, we'd like to get a picture of you in front of our beautiful crowd here. Stand here, we'll get our selfie of the week, and your marks get set perfect.